There was a fan incident and a top star was injured at WWE house shows. The NWA have been called the most toxic brand in wrestling by one of their ex-champions, and we have an update on an injured Raw star in the news right now. House shows, Adam, very dangerous places, wouldn't you agree?
I'm terrified every time I go, Ross.
Why?
Because the matches aren't very good and the merch is really expensive.
Fantastic news. Anyway, Kevin Owens injury scared this weekend at a live event in Peoria? Peoria. That's how you pronounce that word for sure. Kevin Owens basically, he was on the, we had a report from someone called Matt Blaustein on the Twitter machine where he just basically said Kevin Owens dropped from a turnbuckle and jammed his knee. He pounded the mat in frustration, clutching his knee, talking to a referee, but he was able to get up, hit a stunner and finish his match with Theory, but people are saying now this could be a shoot rather than a work.
It looked bad because he was helped to the back by the referee, and apparently he was super angry about what was going on, and it didn't seem very babyface, as it seemed all quite legit. So hopefully it's nothing too serious. You've got to imagine he's going to be in one of the War Game matches.
Yeah, there's one space left on the babyface team. You've got Drew McIntyre, you've got Sheamus and the Brawling Brutes taking on the Bloodline. That babyface team need one more name. Kevin Owens, with his history with Roman Reigns, his history with other people on the other side, it makes sense, and he likes to jump off big massive things and give us terribly gnarly moments, so hopefully he's going to be okay for War Games.
It would suck if he wasn't, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah.
Can you think of like a suitable replacement in there?
On the babyface side?
It's tough, isn't it?
Ricochet. Madcap Moss.
I like Moss, but yeah.
Rey Mysterio's injured.
Yep.
I don't know, on SmackDown. It could be any, I don't know.
Ali's just gone over there for the World Cup, right?
Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Dwayne The Rock Johnson,
there
sorted.
we go. But that wasn't it for live event controversies over the weekend, because we had a fan doing some things towards and to Scarlett Bordeaux, didn't we, Adam?
That's right. Apparently a fan tossed a drink all over Scarlett. She commented on the issue on Twitter saying, as a classy woman from Chicago, I'm not surprised that something would happen in Peoria. To the granny who threw the drink, your booze was as cheap as your hairdo.
Now, if that's an actual granny, that's a bit of a shocking comment.
Well, they used to do all sorts. And they used to like come to the wrestling with bricks in their
brick in the handbag. You swing it, but you don't make contact. It's wholesome content from the grannies. But if you're going to throw drinks at wrestlers, I mean, we don't need to say it, but we'll do it anyway, Adam. Just don't do it. Yeah, even if you're on the front row and you have paid your hard-earned money, it doesn't give you the right to throw drinks at other human beings, does it?
No, imaginary line and all that. We've talked about it loads of times before. I guess on one hand, it's good that she's got that much heat, that she's riled up some old biddy and everything. But yeah, don't throw drinks at wrestlers, as I touched on at the beginning, because they're really expensive. You're looking at like £7 a pint. And this little old lady would have been drinking a gin and tonic. You would have to imagine dollars, probably $11, $12 there.
She wasted. Got the cost of the hip flask with the whiskey in as well that she had to sneak in under a bra probably. So you got to factor those costs in as well. Just take a pea shooter next time, something playful.
Yeah, one of those guns that shoots the air. You know, the big air zookas, I think they're called. That's fine.
Yes,
that's
nobody gets wet when people do that, man. Have a bit of imagination about yourself, grannies. But if just in case you're wondering, Drew McIntyre was taking on Karrion Kross, as it looks like, at least from the house show cards, that feud is continuing. Fascinating.
It's going on a bit, isn't it?
It is going on a bit. Now we have news from the NWA. They had their big event over the weekend there. Of course, they've been making all sorts of headlines recently with Billy Corgan going, yes, there's lots of great female wrestlers in the world at the moment, but could they hold up an NWA card? Could they wrestle the NWA style? The same Billy Corgan, of course, who's just made Tyrus his world champion on the men's side. It doesn't add up, Billy Corgan, you silly man. Adam, a former champion in the NWA has been speaking about their promotion. What is that champion and who is he beating? Who is that champion?
You'll never guess who that champion is, because he's been very quiet over the last week or so. But Nick Aldis has posted a message on Instagram. First of all saying, I hope you now see why it was important to me to let you know that I give my notice to the NWA before this pay-per-view. He, of course, knew what was coming. What was once a promising endeavor that I turned down bigger opportunities to take the lead on has become the most toxic brand in wrestling. Thank you for all the support. He's been chatting away to Sam Roberts as well.
He has. He's been saying, I'm not saying all of it, but there was enough of it that for me that didn't pass the Harley race test. We have consistently presented pro wrestling in a serious and dignified way. I know that people will hear dignified and pro wrestling in the same sentence and say it's an oxymoron. You know what I'm saying. And we do know what you're saying, because back in the very early days of NWA Power, with all the R's on the end there, it was a fantastic throwback to what NWA was way back in the day, with the set, the lack of entrance music. You look at people like, at the time, Eli Drake, Ricky Starks doing good things in there.
I think Trevor Murdoch
Stevens
was killing it, especially. It was a contemporary version of an old school thing, and it really worked. There was some good wrestling on there.
Yeah, and the presentation. That was the main selling point for me, the presentation. Just how
cool,
different it was to the rest of the wrestling world. Studio wrestling there back in the day. But they continued doing that, and as Nick Aldis says, I started looking at stuff like Gags the Gimp, a social distancing match where the two wrestlers...
Go back. What's Gags the Gimp,
Gags
Ross?
the Gimp, Adam. Gags the Gimp. We've all been there, haven't we? We're all basically just gimps in just full gimp attire in the wrestling ring, doing gimpish things. There'll be a picture there if we can show it. Will we get demonetized? Everyone loves a gimp, even the YouTube gods.
Isn't he fun? He would pass the Harley Race test.
Obviously, Harley Race loved gimps. There was a social distancing match where the two wrestlers can't touch each other, and on it went. Different, wacky, silly, comedy, nonsensical stuff. And I said, how would I have justified this to Harley Race if Harley Race had been here today? Imagine if he'd stood there with Harley Race. What would Harley Race say watching this? Or Dory Funk or Ric Flair? I thought if I was stood there with these guys right now, I'd be kind of embarrassed. And he can say exactly what he's trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? Like, comedy has a place in wrestling, obviously. I enjoy funny wrestling matches.
I love gimps.
Yeah, that too. Times have changed and everything, and you've got to experiment, but on paper it's bad. In execution it was worse. It's just not entertaining, really. It was just really crap.
Yeah, and we go back to where they started from at the Arse End of 2019 with the presentation, all the sort of good things going from Wade Barrett and Stu Bennett back then on commentary was a highlight. You had people like Eli Drake, as I say, shoes of a champion. The roster they had, the presentation, it was all going and very well indeed. And then sort of the talent left, went on to different companies like AEW and WWE, and now they're doing stuff like this, and it just seems the wheels have completely fell off, and they've forgotten what they are.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because Billy Corgan was pretty celebrated. He seemed really, really liked by all the wrestlers. So it's a shame to see it in this kind of way. I still think they do some good stuff, but they also do some crap stuff. I imagine Aldous won't struggle to get picked up somewhere. He's very, very good, isn't he?
Impact. That's what's screaming out in my mind. Fair. Yeah, they could do with a big heel on the Healy side of their roster.
British Invasion reunion, maybe.
Why not? Get Doug Williams back on.
Go
on, the British. We have an update on an injured Raw star. Who is that, Adam?
Tommaso Ciampa. He's been out injured since September, of course, and unfortunately it looks like Ciampa's not going to be returning to a WWE ring this side of this year. Before 2022. Before
New Year's even earlier. Yeah.
Old Lang Syne and all that. A report from PW Insider claiming that Ciampa isn't expected back in WWE until 2023 at the very least. He last wrestled in September, taking on Bobby Lashley. He was doing all the stuff with The Miz. I think it's a shame again. And
I think it's clear they had one plan sort of mapped out with Johnny Gargano, obviously Ciampa coming back together, getting DIY back together on the main roster, but because Ciampa's not been able to be there because he's injured, they're having to stall, and we had the expose of The Miz last week, and Johnny Gargano trying to be this comedian who is very heelish in the way he's being a comedian because he's very annoying, but they're trying to paint him as a babyface, and the crowd just aren't really grabbing onto it. It's a very awkward time for Johnny Gargano, I'm feeling, on Monday Night Raw, but hopefully they can pull it round. Hopefully they can keep it going until Ciampa comes back, and they can set up an angle whereby Ciampa comes back, turns on The Miz, and then just goes off with his pal and has a ruddy good time. There you go. It writes itself. So that's it for the afternoon news, the morning news.
Big news of wrestling coming up. Big news of wrestling. Big week of wrestling coming up. Full gear. We got pictures Wednesday, predictions Thursday, reactions, WTF, what happened, that all happening this weekend.
Yeah, that's on Saturday night, isn't it? So most of that content will be on Sunday.
Absolutely. And it's about 20 hours long as well. But not the content that we're putting out, the bloody pay-per-view. I'm done.
Fair enough.
Can't wait.
I love AEW, and we'll see you next time.